Then we can move on to the panel discussion. I would like to invite our speakers up front. And we have an addition for the panel. We have the speakers, and we also have Erja Morottaja, who is the head of communication and fundraising at Vailla, vakinaista asuntoa ry, in English No Fixed Abode NGO. And this No Fixed Abode NGO is an advocacy organization founded by the homeless themselves in 1986, aiming to reduce homelessness and improve and provide services to the homeless people. And we also have Tii Judén, who works as an expert by experience at No Fixed Abode. A very warm welcome to all of you. A question?
Hey, catch a box.
Where is Leap Scandinavia in 2 years from now?
It's a question for the panel.
And for the room. One of the initiatives coming here is talking about the Leap idea, where it comes from, and to build sort of a crowd in different countries. And that's what we're trying to do in the UK, what we're trying to do in France and in other countries. And Paul mentioned Scandinavia, Leap Scandinavia. I talked informally a little bit. I tried to get our police colleague to have a meeting tomorrow to create Leap Finland, but perhaps that's a little bit too fast. But I'm interested in building sort of a movement, and not only Leap, but also with other organizing committees here today. You're all, in one way or the other, working in the field of harm reduction, and you all have your heart in the right places. But we are talking about these subjects for 50 or 60 years, and so it's a political issue. How can you organize people? How can you build a sort of a common ground, bringing in politicians?
Yeah, I can say a couple of words about Leap Scandinavia and where we are right now, and maybe also the way forward. But I think Finland, Scandinavia, that's Norway, primarily Norway now, and Sweden and Denmark. We have members, I think two or three members from Sweden, and a couple from Denmark. The situation is that it's primarily a Norwegian organization right now. And the way forward has been, and the question about Finland, I don't think, I do actually think that Finland, if you want to join, you can do it, but we're discussing in Nordic countries, we are in Norwegian mainly. So it's always the question about language, and maybe we should have a leap, a Nordic leap, also including Iceland. But that is up to the Finns and people on Iceland. So, but I can say at least about the Scandinavia. We started out 2017, I think it was, and actually there were very few of us. We were like 4 or 5 persons, and at that time there was only one person in Norwegian police that were outspoken in these matters. One person. Board. He should have been here. He's still working as a still working prosecution inside the police, and he's police officer. And he's been outspoken all the time. And he was actually the one who sort of broke through the wall, because there has been a wall in the police. It has been impossible to have an open discussion about regulating drugs, because the NNPF has a total monopoly, and I think this is the same all around. So there's more or less total monopoly on what you should think about this. It's quite interesting for me that I've been working more than 20 years in the police system, and I meet police officers all the time. I said, Paul, yeah, support what you say. Of course you're right. And I said, but join us then. I said, no, I can't do that. That will be the end of my career. I will be frozen out. I will get social reaction. This is the basic truth even today. So like now we're 50, 60 in Norway. And some of course come from the prison service and so on. But today in the situation we are slowly gathering some motion, but it takes time and it takes a lot of courage, especially from the police officers. For me as a criminologist to be saying these things, there's no problem. I am an academic, I can say whatever I want, but a police officer, he will get hanged. So this is the truth, and you have to. So if you want to start in Finland, you have to have one or two sort of kamikaze police. I don't know if they're around, who actually wants to go out there and do a social suicide on behalf of the others.
But I don't think the situation is that grave.
Let's get some other speakers.
Yeah. Well, I'll just give an overview of how things are taking shape in Europe. I mean, as I explained earlier on, the movement of police calling for an evidence-based drug policy is growing rapidly across the world. We have a growing membership in the United States, Australia, obviously right across Europe. But we're also connected to the broader movement of police calling for reform, which includes all of the chiefs of police in Canada who called on their government to decriminalise drugs only 2 years ago. But in Europe, we're taking shape. We've got members in Spain, France, obviously lots in Germany, and I think we've got our first recruit from Finland, a very experienced former undercover police officer, can join us in Leap Europe. But the reason that we're now going by the branding and the overarching name of Leap Europe is because you can join us from anywhere. You don't need your own chapter in Finland. You don't need a Leap Finland. You can just be a member of the growing organisation, which is Leap Europe, which is why, for the most part, we're using that as an umbrella sort of branding at the moment.
Aleksi earlier made me be quiet about critiquing Representative Keta Huovinen that just left. It's really unfortunate that she left because I had a lot to tell her still. To our foreign guests who didn't understand what she was saying, she was talking about the importance of tackling drug problems by giving the police more money to increase drug problems. And she was talking about how it's nice that we have people giving their opinions and that we have discussions, but I tend to run into these kinds of issues that I cannot talk to these representatives. They do not want to talk to me. And usually they don't have people in their face asking them, name a country that has had a successful prohibition. No one ever questions them. And that's one thing that we definitely need to change. Getting back into this discussion about LEAP, Europe and so on, I actually wanted to give Heikki a question. First of all, thank you for your speech. It's great that we have police officers in Helsinki that can be bravely critical towards our current system. And I sit on the Helsinki Police Affairs Committee, Helsingin poliisin neuvottelukunta. And in our first meeting, the commander of the Helsinki Police, Aapio, we were talking about the preventative unit, so your unit, and he said that in the Helsinki Police, there's the Helsinki Police, then there's what he called the Taponen gang, or Taposen porukka, referring to Jari Taponen, Heikki's commanding officer. And basically he gave this idea, or gave me this idea that you're kind of like the opposition within the police, and I feel like that gives you a somewhat of a privileged position, so you can talk more openly because your commanding officer is very at odds with the leadership of the Helsinki police on many issues, and can be apparently. In your speech, you said that the higher up in the hierarchy you go, the more constrained you can be in the police within your opinions. While when I've spoken to some junior officers, as I told you in my speech, the more junior you are, the more down in the hierarchy you are, the more constrained your opinions are and what you can say. So it's interesting how we have a different perspective. You see that the higher up in the hierarchy, the more constrained you are. From what I've heard, it's the opposite. And maybe my question to you would be is, how can we advance discussion in this topic within the Helsinki police? What can we do to increase freedom of speech of police officers throughout the hierarchy, whether they're a higher up or a lower down, and facilitate open discussion about these obviously very important topics? And please take this microphone. This is much better than the box.
Thank you for your question, Thomas. First of all, the police institution in Finland, we have very strong trust from the public, and one of the reason is that we do have a separate role from the political decision making. So as we speak right here now, this is very close to the limits that how far the police can go with on speaking as a role of a specialist or expert about certain political questions. And now, before very close to elections, the space is very limited because we need to keep the role different apart, not to go on too far of because of the democracy. I'm sorry, but I cannot explain more clearly. So we need to act as a neutral way. And I also agree that if you are just a junior constable, it's to get into the team, you need to be adopt the way of the team is working. So it takes, I would say, certain amount of years before you can trust yourself and give the idea what you got, and it depends on many different experiment of the person itself. But we have the this. It's a hard question. I go through the oncoming problems with the neighborhood work that comes up from the outreach workers, and then we problem by problem solve the things that if this should be taken care by a police measurement, or can we put aside that there's been a minor drug offense and concentrate on some other problems, so that we do on not daily basis but monthly. Okay, this kind of problem we solve with that solution, and it's every constable do it as its own responsibility. Virkavastuu in Finnish, and that's about the decision of the constable needs to reflect of the ethics and codes of the police, where the human rights are supposed to be proactive work for the police. But it's a hard question. I don't know where to move on and build up a common ground to more discussion.
We can think about it.
I would have a few questions here for all of the panelists, if you may. The first question would be, what would be a good metric to evaluate the effectiveness of drug policy? And Alex, you have the mic there if you want to start.
Yes, thank you. I have a bit of advantage because I was part of formulating these questions, so
thought about them a bit. And I mean, the sort of the common ones, the metrics and measurements are, for instance, prevalence of use, whether it goes up or down, or for instance, drug deaths, whether they go up and down. And in my PhD, I talk about something called politicogenic drug effects. So not drug effects that come from the pharmacology, but the actual drug policing and drug policy, and those kinds of measurements we should also look at. And those can be indeed stigma, which is hard to measure maybe, but also things like, are you preventing people from treatments and services? Are you preventing, are you doing everything you can in order to, for instance, prevent drug deaths, for instance, by safe consumption rooms and such things. So I think when it comes to discussion about drug effects, we should also look at these more effects that come from drug policing as well.
I'd happy to have that kind of measurement for my work. Right now, like the only number which I can somehow rely on to have my work as knowledge-based, knowledge-led policing. It's about the number of how many drug-related deaths is in Finland, and that tells that something needs to be changed. But that's, I cannot get any further than that. So if we have to have more of investigated or researched information.
I represent the NGO working with the homeless people, and from our point of view, it is like how people will get treatment, and that is how and then we think about also like how society should work, and that is always the measurement of everything we do, and on our behalf is that people will be treated as humans no matter what, and that is the way we should also measure everything. As long as we have people who are in a weaker position in societies, and if they are left out from the policy, no matter what it is, like if it's the substance abuse or whatever, it is always like we have to kind of like measure things with the human approach. And people, no matter what their background is, are they people from the streets, like who are homeless on the streets, or are they so-called white-collar people? So the people would get the treatment, and also how society treats them when there is like the criminal aspect of that. And that is our approach to things in general. We are, with the homelessness, we are kind of like model country in the world and model country in Europe. We have the housing first system, so we should have also in drug or abuse, substance abuse things also like treatment first in many ways. That we start to think about first the well-being of human, and then start to resolve the other problems also. I really don't have to say anything about this. Say what did she say already?
If we don't have more answers, we can get more
My
questions.
heart was beating so fast.
We can get more questions if we don't have more answers. I have nothing to add.
Following on from the lady who spoke earlier, actually, I'm feeling a bit kind of that I need to address what the bits that I picked up from what she said. Now, a good metric for me would be we've had 100 years of prohibition, and yet you've still got somebody stood here speaking very eloquently, trying to defend and trying to sort of say we'll put more money into that, and expecting a different result. And for me, that's an insult to me, and for my dead daughter, that's not going to protect more children. So we need to eliminate prohibition and be more progressive and more brave. The results will never change if we just stick to what already exists.
Yes, not much I can add to that, except I also wanted to pick up on a point that our Honourable Member of Parliament said, again, what I picked up on that was translated to me. and a big point has been made today, not just by her, but by someone else as well, that Finland has a particular problem in drug deaths, in that Finland has the highest under 25 deaths in Europe. And again, the Member of Parliament said, she's left now, but she said that Finland shouldn't be in that position, and I completely agree. But in making the case and observing that Finland has that particular statistic, should we not therefore look at the European countries that have the lowest under 25 drug deaths? And I believe, I've just been trying to check, but I believe that is actually Portugal. Portugal has the second lowest drug deaths in Europe after Romania. I believe it has the lowest under 25 deaths. So if anyone fancies tweeting that back to her in Finnish, that is a very, very important response to the point that she made, I believe.
Can I respond directly to this?
Okay, so I think that the whole thing that went on here was embarrassing. It was an embarrassment. It's that our members of parliament should not behave in this way. They do not listen to the discussion that happens before them. They come give their own speech. They don't answer questions that are given to them, and then they leave before they can answer for what they've said. I will definitely tweet at her, and a lot of people follow me on Twitter around drug policy discussions, so no, definitely people will hear about what happened here today. I'm a deputy city councillor, and a couple weeks ago the Helsinki City Council actually passed an initiative that I made, which was about...
Let's keep it short.
I'll keep it short. Which was about advancing ways to prevent overdose deaths in Helsinki. One of those included that we would have these overdose prevention centers where people can actually use drugs. This is currently being blocked by the government, but maybe not the next one. And it also included that we would have drug testing centers. And this is one way of preventing deaths, for example, from MDMA. And her party, the National Coalition Party, was strongly against drug testing. They would, and when we had the discussion in City Council, we had speeches where it was said that we cannot make drugs safer to use, because then that would encourage drug use. There's this idea on this side of the political spectrum that if it is very dangerous to use drugs and people die because of it, then less people use drugs. And to me, that is a very inhumane way to deal with this. Thank you.
Nils Christie said a lot of smart things. One thing he said, the most dangerous use of drugs is the political one.
That's very good.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I think when we're discussing this problem, I think that if you look to medicine, they talk about iatrogenic diseases. That is problems created by the cure. When the cure kills the patient, you should stop that cure. You shouldn't be keeping on doing it. And I think that is the bottom line. What are we going to look after? So, of course, the thing you should look after is a system that creates less pain, less harm. It's that simple as that. The less pain, less harm you create by a system, and then you have to take all the figures into consideration. If people use some drugs but get happy from it, what's the problem? It's a total bullshit, the whole system. I mean, so we have to be pragmatic. Be pragmatic. Think that try to create a system that creates less pain. That's the whole thing.
And the next question for the panelists. What kind of changes to drug policy should be made first?
Where do you want to start?
Who wants to start?
I can
Well,
start.
yeah,
What was the question?
What kind of changes to drug policy should be made first?
Someone who hasn't said anything yet can start.
I am pragmatic. So I actually think what we were on the way to doing in Norway was the first step, decriminalization. Of course, I mean, we can't stop there, but we have somewhere we have to start, and we have to show people that this is not dangerous. It's not going to hell, so we have to start somewhere.
Going after you.
I guess you've already agreed with this, but had Martha been able to test what she was about to take, she wouldn't have taken enough for 5 to 10 people, and it would have saved her life. She would have been able to make an informed decision. Now, everything I've said today, I must be clear about this, because Martha was only 15 years old, so I'm advocating all this sort of regulatory sort of discussion for adults. But had something that had been regulated got into Martha's hands as a younger person, she would have still been safer than the outcome that we got.
I'm not going to advocate to legalize drugs for children, but right now, if a 15-year-old drinks alcohol, they will not lose their sight. But that's something that could have happened during Prohibition.
Good point.
If a 15-year-old were to use regulated MDMA, they couldn't die of it. So that's a big difference where, yes, we should only have legally regulated drugs for adults, yes, but that also protects children. This isn't the thing that I would do first. The first thing I would do is legalize cannabis, decriminalize all drugs, and conduct a very intense scientific examination of our entire drug policy and what we should do about it. That's what I would do next governmental term.
Sounds like Canada.
I have said this is my own thought about this, but I think we have to decriminalize substance uses, because it's only way to help people. They get stigmatic. I was 11 when I was starting use substances. I was using amphetamine first, and then I tried to everything else. So I think so. When I was young, then this time police doesn't give up anything about our future. Nowadays it's a different, because what I heard, what you said before, it's not normal when I was young. So we have to stop getting these tickets for these young people, because 15 years who use some substances, he or she got some kind of ticket about that. Probably the future is gone in that moment. It's the problem. Our people right now, these young people who dying. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. These young people who using substances and dying for it. These homeless, young, under 25 years people, they scare about tell police. This situation where they somebody doing some bad things for them, they scared to tell to you because they have this ticket. Already they feeling this stigma. So when they call to you, somebody beating them or something like that, police check those pockets, and already they are criminal. This is a problem, and this is my opinion, not in NGO.
Yeah, like it's from our point of view, what we see that especially young people or women who are always like underdogs in the street world, so it kind of stops them to ask help, because like it's the criminal aspect there. Like if you are part of something, then you are afraid to call for help, and that is like with even like if you die for the substance uses, and that it kind of stops you to call help. And that is also what you said, like there should be possibility to test what you are using. That is very, very fundamental thing. We are talking about in Finland these rooms or places where you could use drugs safely, and we are talking about that there should be a safe place, and underline the word safe place, and those places should be provided by communities or cities or some other public. It's not like on the private sector or anything, but run by the cities or governments or municipalities or whatever. But that is like the safe place that you would be able to test what you are using. There should be always some kind of health and social worker or health there, and that is very, very fundamental there too. And then also like they would never ever be big units, smaller units all around the cities, and kind of I think like save lives and then also lower the how to get help. So that is like what we see on the street level and what Tii was also with her own experiences, that it's very important that people would be able to trust on the authorities, the police force, the social and health services without being or having a stigma and without getting a punishment for that. So that is our opinion.
I agree, both of you. About, I think the first thing should be this overdose prevention facility, like have those to see what happens and what's the effect. That would be the first thing, and then we are very aware of the stigmatized situation and strong counter effects of minor drug offense itself. So we know the problematic and the consequences of that. It is a big one.
I'd like to just add that I think one of the first things is not a very like a thing to do, but like more of a way of thinking that drugs in themselves are not bad or good. They're molecules or plants or fungi, and like they don't really care what we think about them, but they do have different effects, of course. Some of them harmful, some of them beneficial, some of them neutral. And when we kind of start thinking about these things as they are, which is basically molecules, then we can start thinking about pragmatic ways of reducing harm and increasing their benefits.
And the next question, whose expertise should be relied upon when formulating drug laws? Who do you think? Do you want to start from that side this time?
It's hard to name just a group of people that should be the experts. I mean, in some ways, people who use drugs are definitely experts. They know about the effects and they know how to do them correctly most of the time. But is that enough for lawmakers to consider? I don't know. I mean, a lot of political parties say that we follow the evidence. We are a science-based political party. And like, well, then, you know, put your money where your mouth is and follow the evidence.
Just behalf of the police perspective, I think that things that end up being investigated or end up in the police statistics, it's very narrow part of the society. So that should be like taking account when things asked from police.
We always talk about the collaboration across the lines, and doing things with studies is very important. Doing things with police force and authorities is very important. And we are an NGO organization that was started by homeless people themselves, and very strongly in our work is to listen experts by expertise. So that is also my answer to that listen to experts by expertise, also like alongside with the authorities and with the studies and everything. So that is very important to listen to people who has experience themselves.
I think there's one group of people that aren't mentioned enough. That's the whole harm reduction research community. I think we are not capable, at least in the Netherlands, to get this harm reduction perspective, insights, on the ground stories of how things can go wrong in all sorts of situations. To get this harm reduction narrative towards politicians, towards the police, So there's a lot of research going into criminology, but let's skip it in half and do the other half the money, put it into harm reduction to educate politicians, to educate the general public, because we are not able as a group of different people, politicians, criminologists, police, we are not able to get this message across. And the only way to get more people interested and enthusiastic and insightful is to tell the harm reduction story all the time, in every sort of way. And also perhaps, that's something I came up with here in Scandinavia, I watch a lot of Netflix series, and sometimes I think the whole of Scandinavia is filled with killers. And so that's also part of the problem, not only here in Scandinavia, but we have this repressive wet dream that a lot of politicians still have. And the only way to educate them a little bit is to get this harm reduction story across the board. And we are not able to do that. We keep sticking into the trenches, you're wrong, and this isn't good, and it has no effect, and stuff like that. So we have to be a little bit more intelligent.
I got a very interdisciplinary education, which means a lot of different sciences combined, and that's the approach that I take to this issue as well. We need a wide range of expertise in every political topic, but especially this one because it's a very wicked problem. But we have to understand that experts are usually experts mostly in their own field. Like we have police officers and former police officers here which are experts on policing. When we listen to doctors and other healthcare professionals, they're definitely experts in the effects that drugs have on the human body. But police and doctors are not necessarily experts on what our drug policy should be like. In this sense, we should listen more to sociologists who study the effects that the legal system has on people and the way people interact with each other. The only way moving forward is a science-based approach, and we have to respect all the sciences. Thank you.
I don't know how you can do this, but I would really like to have young people represent themselves in this discussion, to hear their voices, to hear what's going on in their lives, and possibly that would need to be anonymously, but I think that future policies should have their voice and their information in the mix of it as well, in order that they can represent themselves, and future generations will benefit from that as well.
Yeah, I like all of those answers. They're all brilliant, but I want to just emphasise something that Alexi said, that actually people who use drugs should be at the centre of this, which of course is incredibly difficult because they're criminalised and they can't speak out. But for every aspect of drug consumption, whether it's adult use consumption in the electronic music world, for example, we should be asking people who take MDMA on the dance floor or at a festival or wherever it is, what do you think you should be? How could you be best looked after? And we should be informed by people who use drugs. Of course, we need to break down the criminal barriers in order to do that, but they have to be up front and centre in this discussion. But I still agree with all of the comments.
I agree with Uni. The thing that really made a change in Norway was that users started to organize, and users started to make pressure groups, like Normal, like Humane, like Forening, and so on. And these groups, and with certain persons, have, after a while, got very, very much respect. And they have changed the way we view the drug issue on. Because I can say that some of the main problems is not the research, but the questions that we ask, the perspectives we have. Because if you look upon, it's like if you're you know, if you can use a hammer, everything you see is a nail. That's an old saying, and it's been the same in the drug debate. We have actually asked the wrong questions for years and years, and we have the wrong perspectives. And the strange thing is, of course, that we ended up in this sort of strange world. You know, it's sort of Alice in Wonderland, where everything turned upside down. The question of drugs is not strange. It's not a strange thing at all. It's like you said that the pharmaceuticals, that's the strange things. It's the same thing. The question, of course, you should ask are quite different. Why do we treat these things in this way, and so on? And then I think you will get some nasty answers. So start listening to the users. Start listening to the people who actually have experiences with this. Try to get new ways of thinking. And then of course there are a lot of good research around, but there's also a lot of bullshit research around. They actually ask the wrong questions, and then of course you get bullshit research. It's a lot of it around in this field.
Okay. So this next question, it wasn't in the. We have time for audience questions as well.
This wasn't a question. This was an add-on.
Okay. You want?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the original question was who should be talking about the regulation in the table and design that. I totally agree all of the previous ones, but one aspect that I would like to throw into the bin is that when we start regulating, we need to remember that we are also thinking who will sell the product. So we need to take also the business and economic side to the table to think about. So we have all the aspects. So that was one thing that was in my mind. Thank you.
You need politicians for that one.
I actually am.
Your answers to the last question were very good. I would like to hear more. Do you really think that it matters who are the experts who are preparing what we are now talking about? Because as it's set up in the parliament, the decisions still are based on feelings by the politicians. So I mean, does it really matter who is doing the background work? I would like to see your view.
I have a good answer.
So yeah, like I said in my speech earlier, politicians are cowards. And they will do what is popular, not what is right. One way around this is what Ireland is actually doing right now. They're starting a citizens' assembly on drugs. They've done this before when it comes to access to safe abortions and marriage equality. Basically, the idea is that you get around something like 200 people, just random, normal people that are representative of the population. And then you get these people that are not politicians, just normal citizens, talking about issues, usually very divisive issues. And for example, in the access to safe abortion debate, Ireland is a very Catholic country. And then when you take the most adamant Catholics with the most adamant feminists and everyone in between, and you get these people talking to each other, they find out what their common goals are, and then with the help of experts, they find ways to achieve those goals. And we know that access to safe abortion is the way to reduce harms. And this is what they're doing in Ireland now with drugs as well. They started a citizens' assembly that will discuss drug policy. And this is to get around the cowardice of politicians, to give politicians a backing from citizens, a science-based backing. And this would be one way to get through this deadlock, because you are right. We did have experts testifying to Parliament that we shouldn't just decriminalize cannabis. We should decriminalize all drugs. And then those politicians went into the big room that they have, and a very large majority voted against those expert opinions. So yeah, citizen assemblies would be one way to get around this.
very brief reminder that Portugal got decriminalisation because the politicians said, you're the group of experts, we've assembled you because you are experts, we will abide by any decision that you make. And that was agreed up front. That's quite a good way to go as well.
That's pretty good as well.
Yes, in Finland, sorry, the name of our authority, Onnettomuustutkintakeskus, is today making investigation about people under 25 years old who are dying because of drugs, and I believe there's some sort of solution that other authorities can rely on some neutral investigation. So maybe it takes the discussion a bit further.
Do we have time for one question? So what came to my mind, I'm sorry this wasn't on the list, so it's out of the list question, out of the box question, but really related about, we've been talking about this legal regulated market now today a lot. And on the opposition there's an idea that we need punishment, because without punishment people will use drugs, and punishment prevents problems. And so what would you say to these people who are afraid that legal regulated markets would bring a lot more drug use and a lot more problems to society?
I'll start passing the mic from here. I guess one answer would be look at what the statistics say now. Under prohibition, the prevalence is still going up. So it's not very good at preventing that. And then you can make arguments how if you have a safe supply, then there's less harm and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I do understand that there's a lot of fears around this issue, especially if you're not very well informed and all that kind of stuff. So it's good to, I think, build bridges between these people that have fears instead of just saying that no, you're wrong, and look at what the countries are doing in statistics. Because I mean, it's not necessarily a debate based on just knowledge, of course.
If I remember the question, but about the police officers, our job is to maintain safety, and it's something that it's about ethics, that if I'm doing it proactively, or do I put the responsibility to pass it on, that okay, somebody tell me what to do. The police forces usually quite reactive. We need some push from somewhere to start doing our job. There's armed services is working on that, but every officer to think, what is my resource, what is my effort to keep the city safe? And when we look the statistic that the deaths are rising, so there's each police officer should think about that.
I pretty much agree with what you were saying, that that is kind of fundamental idea behind that.
Question, please.
What do you say to the people who are afraid that if we have regulated legal markets for drugs, that the drug use will go up and the problems will go up?
I really think so. I probably said it's like when we open those, stop making these substance users criminals, when we stop it, probably people who doesn't give a shit about this situation try to something. I think so they try to something because they have this possibility testing something. So then those numbers going a little bit up, but when it's a longer time, it's going to stabilization. I think so. So that is not a relevant question, I think so. So it not happen so bad things, and we have this law system. We can do it back those laws. That is a really big mistake. But what you looking around the world, what they already did, it doesn't look it so so massive strategia, niin kuin, että se ei ole niin hirveä turmio, mitä nyt se sanoo.
Yeah, it's not a failure. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's not a big failure. Yeah, thank you.
Again, show and tell. There are so many people in Western societies who on a regular basis use all sorts of drugs and have no problem with either be cannabis. We have all these party scenes in all our countries where ecstasy is taken. I have an old army buddy who lives somewhere in a sort of a working class agricultural area. I was at a party a couple of months ago, and I started talking with young people who do a hell of a job, work 6 days a week, make a lot of money, and I asked them, what about cocaine? We all use it. So this fantasy that it's somewhere outside social relations, somewhere outside our normal economic sphere. I mentioned my daughter earlier in my talk. She had a girlfriend who knew a Moroccan dealer on a scooter who on a daily basis went to Amsterdam law firms to sell them cocaine. So this moralistic bourgeois fantasy that somewhere outside normal life is drug taking, and it's horrible. And most people have no problem with it whatsoever. And the people that have problems with it, that's why we have a professional harm reduction program. And also the hypocrisy with regard to alcohol. It's incredible. The number of people I know socially who have a problem with alcohol use, or every now and then with alcohol use, and that we skip all this morality and all this devastating effects on bodies and minds of many people whom we work with, whom we socialize with, whom we find interesting because they have taken half a bottle of vodka. Ah, funny guy. Nice. The hypocrisy is enormous.
And I think I'm in the risk of substance abuse mostly. I'm a middle-aged woman, and for me, like having a glass of wine or champagne every day, 2, 3, 5 glasses, and nobody gives a shit of my behavior. But the people who are on the streets without home, who have like lots of other socio-economical problems, yeah, they are the bad guys. They are using the drugs, and I'm the actually like the normal thing, and it's acceptable for me to be an alcoholic, for example. As you said, like it's funny guy, oh, she's a little bit relaxing. Tough mom.
This was a very good question you proposed, and I talk to people all the time, either on Twitter or in markets when I'm campaigning, who are very against, for example, the legalization of cannabis. That's the thing I talk about the most. It's I changed my party's platform in it, so I kind of have to talk about it. And there's a couple rhetorical ways I try to convince people, and have convinced very many people, very conservative people as well, that legalization and regulation is the only sustainable way forward. One thing is that we have to accept the fact that cannabis use is very prevalent. It's the most widely used illegal drug in the world. Over 70% of all drug confiscations in the EU relate to cannabis. There's over 400,000 Finns that use cannabis. 25% of Finns have used cannabis at least once in their life. In this situation, you have two choices. You can either have this market controlled by organized crime or controlled by the state. you have those two options, and you have to choose one. You can either have cannabis funds going to building criminal gangs, or you can have it going towards building a welfare state and to the wages of legal entrepreneurs. You have to choose one. You have to choose either one of them. The other rhetorical way to get people to understand the failure of our current policy is to talk to them about the prohibition of alcohol, because we had the prohibition of alcohol in Finland, and everyone here knows how big of a failure that was. People started using stronger alcohol. The same thing happens with all drugs always, but with cannabis also, the cannabis that people use here is stronger. Its health effects can be more negative. And we even have synthetic cannabinoids that can even cause overdose deaths. And criminals get richer. We see that with cannabis as well. It's easy for kids to access. And when you compare the prohibition of cannabis with alcohol, it makes people's minds, it gets them working, because they see it's the exact same thing. And I have to admit that I have not been brave enough talking about the regulation of other drugs, other than cannabis, that is, because, cannabis regulation, it's a very popular idea. Pretty much everyone in Helsinki, especially that I know, supports this issue. Now, the regulation of drugs like MDMA or cocaine, those are things that we should do. The prohibition of cocaine has destroyed entire nations in Central and South America. And this is also, we should also be comparing this to the prohibition of alcohol. But yeah, these would be my two things, Choose one of these two systems and compare them to alcohol prohibition. Thank you.
So what I would say to people that are concerned, how could things get any worse than they already are? Look around the world, look to South America as well for our future. You gave me this stat, didn't you, Neil, about children, county lines in the UK, and 50,000 children currently dealing heroin? Yeah. 50,000 children in the UK right now are dealing heroin. Now, under legal regulation, more people might use drugs, but there'll be less problematic drug use and there'll be less deaths. So I don't see a problem with more people using drugs under those conditions.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's a simple comparison. Look at how strict prohibition is. Any country around the world, you see more harms. Where our country has more of a health approach, you have less harms. Very clear. The evidence is very clear. Prohibition kills. Legal regulation saves lives and prevents child exploitation.
Many very good answers. So I just had one small thing to add. If I talk with people who don't share my views, I usually tell them a story or two, and it had to be a good story, or they won't listen, because they all got a very short span of attention. Politicians and police chiefs have a very short span of attention. So I would tell them this thing, that the most dangerous, one of the absolutely most dangerous drugs we have in Norway, the use of that has been reduced dramatically since the 1980s. And that has been legal all the time, and it's called tobacco. And I said, if you had criminalized the use of tobacco, I can bet whatever that it hasn't gone down at all, it would have risen, and it would have been stably high. So, people usually don't think about tobacco, but as we grew up, everyone smoked around me. I was a deviant one, I didn't smoke. Everyone smoked, and they smoked hell of a lot. Many of them have become sick after that. It's the one drug that if you use it correctly, you will become sick or die of it sooner or later. And that one is legal. And it's also the same thing. So, and we have reduced it. Why? Because of information, and because it has become unpopular among youth. It stinks, and it does. So, and also sort of other things like that. You have to smoke in special places and make it awkward and so on. But it's not illegal. So cases like that, those one is quite simple. Even even liberal, conservative politicians in Norway will understand that, maybe.
Thank you.
It all ends with a small story. I want to talk to it. Now, there's this one fantastic story I just recently heard, where in the United States, Republican senators are very much into psychotropics, the use of substances for PTSS soldiers. There's a large mental health issue. We always tend to, well, criminalize, and we have to deregulate, but mental health, the last couple of years, not only with PTSS, but also in the COVID crisis, also with youth in our societies, students, loans that have to be paid off, the fact that there is a lack of economic prospects for our next generation. So mental health could be combined with everything we did today. And there seems to be, even for Republican senators, and then you have a category of people that is a little bit reluctant in many political aspects. If even they argue, well, we have to look into this and decriminalize it and use it for health issues. That's very promising. I'd like to end on a high note.
Can I, one quick addition? It was said here that if tobacco would be illegal, its use would be increasing. And we see that in Finland because snus, the tobacco product that they use a lot in Scandinavia, that use is increasing a lot because it's illegal to buy in Finland. So they go to Sweden, they get the cheapest and strongest snus, and then it's brought here and it's sold by criminals. That's why we should legalize that as well. Thank you.
Okay, we're a bit running out of time here, so we need to wrap it up. And I thank all the panelists, all of you who came here to talk, gave your time and energy to fly all the way up from across Europe here. And I thank everyone who came here to listen. And yeah, thank you. There's one. Do you have a question for the panelists?
Don't have time for the street to read.
Yeah. That was a great one.
All right, so just a quick question for all the panelists. So we heard a Parliament member talking a little bit earlier, and she was full of wrong facts. Let's just put it this way. So basically, we all agree we want to reduce harms. We want to put our money where people are going to benefit the most. So basically, mental health care and all these. Now, there was a lot of debate about should we legalize or should we decriminalize. And now I'm talking about just cannabis, not any other substance, even though we probably should. But, for example, people who are advocating, like, they really want to reduce harm, but they do not want to legalize. And they want to put more money into the mental health care system. Where's this money going to come from? Like, if we do not regulate, getting tax incomes or anything from this one, who is going to pay for decriminalization? Yes, we're not going to be hunting the users anymore, but we are still going to have the criminal organizations and everyone doing the same stuff as before. So who is going to be paying for not legalizing? Thank you.
We are.
Is there a short answer from someone?
Yeah, it's a political choice. You've laid out a political choice, and politics is about choices because there are always limited resources, and you've highlighted the point rhetorically, really, without us having to answer, I would suggest. That finances have to go away from policing, or they have to go into health.
Great. So we'll end there, and thank you everyone, and let's continue the conversation.